You're listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me today are Jeff Franke and Anna Wells. We're the editors of Manufacturing.net and Industrial Equipment News with about 15 years experience working in the manufacturing industry. Each week, we take the top 5 stories on our websites and discuss the impacts they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out by leaving a positive review on Apple Podcast or whatever platform you use. Finally, to email the podcast, you can reach us at Jeff, Anna, or David at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. Anna, how are you doing this week?
Doing great. How about you?
I'm pumped up this week. Getting ready to take the next week off.
Always, though, pumped up.
Yeah, no. It's like I'm a 10.5 today, not a 10.6. Jeff, how you doing?
Good, and I see you even got water as opposed to coffee.
I know.
So,
I stopped coffee and somehow it still went up. No, it's good. Racing heart rates is good. Our first story this week, IBM says semiconductor maker owes $2.5 billion. Tech giant IBM wants GlobalFoundries, a major semiconductor manufacturer, to pay $2.5 billion for violating the terms of a 2014 deal. GlobalFoundries says the timing is highly suspect. 6 years ago, GlobalFoundries bought IBM's chip business for $1.5 billion. IBM says GlobalFoundries agreed to continue making chips for IBM as part of the deal. But in 2018, GlobalFoundries abandoned advanced chip-making technology due to outrageous R&D costs. IBM worked with Samsung for its chips for more than 2 years before it sent a letter to GlobalFoundries in April alleging contract violations. GlobalFoundries questioned the timing of the lawsuit, which comes just as the chipmaker prepares to move forward with an initial public offering that could value the company at some $30 billion. Jeff, is the timing highly suspect?
I mean, suspect kind of offers some sort of like criminal or unmoral type of thing here. I don't think it's suspect. It makes
eyebrow-raising?
sense. Yeah, I mean, it does make sense. You know, looking at some things, IBM, although they're still a huge $120 billion company, I mean, they are coming off some rough times. Earlier this year, they reported their 7th consecutive annual sales decline in adjusted earnings, and their 8th annual sales drop. 7 consecutive years of earnings decline, 8th year of sales decline. So they're struggling a little bit. So if they can look to recoup $2.5 billion, that might help a little bit. Can definitely understand that. I think looking at this from GlobalFoundries' perspective, I think being a contract manufacturer, even in something as complex as semiconductor production, they basically looked at this, and 3 years ago they said, this is no longer a service we're going to do. It does not make sense for our business model. We cannot continue to keep investing this money. We're not doing it anymore. To them, that must have really concluded things. They didn't hear from IBM for 3 years, so they thought things were cool.
Yeah.
So IBM has a case here. But yeah, the timing, I mean, it fits in with a lot of other stuff that's going on right now.
Yeah. Anna, what are your thoughts on it? Was it just, should have it just been cool after 2 years?
Yeah, it kind of makes me nervous now that I could still be subject to like phone calls or something about something I said a long time ago. Like, hey, you know what? I didn't think that was funny.
Oh, it's all on YouTube forever. So we'll get those not 2 years later, like 30 years later.
I am still mad.
Ms. Wells.
I thought Jeff brought up some good points about IBM's. They've had kind of a troubled, or maybe not troubled, but like very kind of stagnant last few years. Their CEO, Ginny Rometty, she stepped down last year. So they have a new CEO. So it's possible that he is probably being charged with like appeasing some of these investors who are really, putting them on blast for like the last few years of not having really any growth and sometimes losses. Arvind Krishna is his name, the new CEO. He's apparently being focused on accelerating their transition from things like hardware infrastructure and more towards like hybrid cloud and emerging technologies like AI. But guess what? They still need chips. So I think like divesting the semiconductor business way back when they did still aligns with their strategy. However, these are kind of the risks that you face when you take a process that's in-house and you outsource it. So unfortunately, and IBM is kind of, and I don't know what the terms of their agreement were, so I can't speak to that. Whether Global Foundries is like really pulling the rug out from them or not, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But you do kind of risk. You can't like force this company to stay in business forever. You can't force them to produce this product line forever. I don't think from a legal standpoint, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because IBM is still design the chips. They just don't actually produce them. So they are in a tough spot, especially with all the supply chain issues that are going on right now. They're designing products like you talked about with all these advanced technologies that need what they're designing. They just can't find somebody to make it right now. And they did funnel $1.5 billion into this company.
Yeah.
So,
Do you think this deal would happen now after everything that we've seen with the pandemic, everything that we've seen with supply chain disruption? Does this deal happen now? Or do they decide to keep it in-house now that they've seen not this particular issue, but like everything that, like, do you think people will stop selling off pieces of their company that don't necessarily align with their go forward strategy, but are still a critical part of their business?
I don't think you can look at like semiconductors and that market in a vacuum, because what's also changed over the years and continues to is the pressure for public companies to continue to turn a profit. And so if they would called it like a commoditized, I don't remember what the term they used, but commoditized assets that they were trying to divest. And, if it's not helping to build their business and not helping to fuel their profitability, then they are going to be pressured to pull these types of, business units out of the overall company and move forward another way. So I don't know. I see your point, but at the same time, I think like if it's a loss leader or something, then yes, it would happen.
Okay.
It's my thought, but
Jeff?
yeah, I mean, as we'll talk about with another story further down, it's expensive to make stuff, especially when it's complex stuff like semiconductor chips. So I understand where IBM was coming from. They still have the intellectual capabilities. They just don't want to have to physically produce it. I think that's always going to be a popular source to go when you're looking to streamline and improve your revenue and improve your profit margins. So,
But I mean, as these things keep coming up where it doesn't work out so hot for the other person, I mean, maybe not so much anymore.
well, and like Anna said, this is unique. This is, especially now with everything that's going on. I wonder if Global Foundries could go back to 2018. Would they have made those investments? Because now maybe they would be able to capitalize on a greater market potential. They're already going to be valued at $30 billion. I'm sure a lot of that comes from the fact that they've got a lot of people knocking at their door right now, and it isn't for as high level stuff as what IBM is looking for. It's looking for some of the more, I hate to use the word term basic when we're talking about computer chips, but more standard type product offerings that they can probably create and manufacture at a greater margin for them.
So the attorneys for Global Foundries allege that IBM was simply seeking a, quote, quick payday. But after we posted the story, an IBM company spokesperson reached out to us with the following statement. IBM depended on Global Foundries after investing heavily in a long-term mutual relationship. Global Foundries responded by taking IBM's money and benefiting from IBM's knowledge, skill, and assets. Though Global Foundries repeatedly assured IBM that it would meet its commitments, Global Foundries instead abruptly and without any justification walked away from IBM while IBM was reliant on Global Foundries. Global Foundries has demonstrably failed to act as a reliable partner and supplier. I mean, that sounds angry for somebody that was just looking for a quick payday.
this is like a divorce proceeding.
Yeah,
These
that's what it sounds like. It does.
two are not friends.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
She said she'd be cool about the dryer. No,
The dryer.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
it's maybe personal experience.
well, there's no law against being a bad partner.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's how you want to play it, I mean, and from what we've seen here, I don't think that's the case. In my opinion, I don't think Global Foundries was a bad partner, but they just made a business decision, and IBM did not like it.
Yeah,
So,
I'm sure that they did the cold-hearted. Hey, nothing against you. This is just a business decision because that makes it hurt less.
Yeah.
No.
But if IBM dumped a bunch of money into this and then Global Foundry was like, all right, well, forget it. We're not.
Yeah, still a pass.
I don't know. Like it's probably very complicated.
Agreed. Our fourth most popular story this week: smelly nuisance chicken plant blocked. A court has blocked the construction of a Pilgrim's Pride plant in Gadsden, Alabama. The proposed processing plant would render dead chickens and chicken parts into animal feed. The plant has received a lot of, quote, vocal community opposition because the plant will be, quote, a smelly, dangerous nuisance. The plant would be located near homes, schools, and a church and process 120 truckloads of chicken parts daily. So, a judge acknowledged that the community has some concerns, but it's a tricky problem because what's more important, bringing jobs to the area or the rights of the citizens in the community? A trial has been scheduled for later this summer to either uphold the injunction or allow the plant to proceed with construction. Anna, I mean, no one wants to live next to a smelly chicken part plant.
It's going to be smelly, folks.
It's going to be gross.
We know, we know that for a fact.
Yeah.
I think these stories tend to be a little contentious because each side has their points, right? I mean, this area was rocked in 2020 when a Goodyear tire plant that had been there for like 90 years closed its doors.
Oh.
And the judge in this case, as you mentioned, acknowledged that the area needs to do something to replace those jobs. But he's stressing that there has to be a balance between the needs of the community and not just those who want to work in a plant that's close to their home, right? So certain food plants have faced opposition from communities in the past, as we've seen, with like hog farms and things like that. I mean, there's been a lot of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of these opponents get accused of the not in my backyard kind of approach. But in this case, the city would actually need to rezone in order to approve the plant. And that's where some of these businesses and homeowners, I think, are getting kind of the thrust of their argument, it seems. And the Facebook group that's organizing the opposition to the proposal has 9,000 members, and the population of this town is only 34,000.
Yeah. So,
I mean,
yeah, third.
Yeah, we don't know who those people are, right? But it speaks to the level of the opposition here. So I don't know. As you said, like there's the trial's in July. So this could change. But for now, I'm sure some of these people are relieved that it's not moving forward as of now.
Yeah. The worst I've ever smelled was a dog food plant. How about you?
Are you asking me what the worst thing I've ever smelled?
No. Like in terms of plants. I mean, we travel a lot.
I grew up in a mill town, and the paper mill, when it would be like humid or rainy outside, you could smell that.
Yeah.
And at the time, I hated it, and now it's like nostalgia for me.
Yeah.
So
Now it reminds you of home.
Yeah.
Jeff, smelly plants?
There was a factory growing up in Juneau, Wisconsin that did yeast.
Ooh.
So when that was fired up, that was not pleasant. That was rough.
Yeah.
That was not good.
Yeah. So what about this rendering plant?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, first of all, you see where the town is coming from. And they've got a page on their website, too, dedicated to all the potential benefits. $67 million annually in direct and indirect money that would be funneled into the community. More money for schools, all that good stuff. And like Anna alluded to, that Goodyear plant leaving after 90 years, that left a huge vacuum there. The other side of it, though, when you look at things from Pilgrim's Pride perspective, if you Google this town and Pilgrim Pride facilities within 50 miles of it, there's about 10 of them.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
So Pilgrim's Pride is seeing something here, and I think part of it may be the fact that they can, not doing anything, I think, immoral, but it's a lower pay level that they can get away with in this particular area. When you look at other states in the area, Alabama workers for Pilgrim's Pride make a couple $1,000s less than even right next door in Atlanta, Tennessee, or if you go further up, I Googled Wisconsin, it was less there too.
Oh, okay.
So there too. So I think there could be a reason why Pilgrim's Pride is looking to sort of shoehorn in another facility into this area because it is more cost effective, and it is let's be honest, these aren't glorified jobs. I mean, this is hard work, and it's kind of dirty work, obviously. The folks don't want it, like Anna said, in their backyard. So I can see where Pilgrim Pride is coming from. I can also see where this community is coming from with the best of intentions. But also, if you're Pilgrim's Pride, do you want to go into a community that's telling you they don't want you there?
Right.
That's why a lot of these plants end up pulling out, I think, if there's like just years of like contentious like legal battles and stuff. In the end, a lot of times that is effective in getting them to say, you know what, forget it.
Yeah,
and Pilgrim's Pride has been through it in the last couple of years too. They've got a lot of bad stuff going on, so they probably don't need the drama.
Well, what I thought about is there's a lot of odor remediation technology out there, stuff that you can put in your HVAC systems, ozone systems like that can do a significant amount of odor remediation. I just did a story on researchers from the Institute of Bioengineering of Catalonia in Barcelona, Spain. They built an olfactory drone prototype to monitor and improve management at water treatment plants. And I kind of joked because if you can figure it out at a water treatment plant, probably should work anywhere. I mean, since our office is right down the road and that breeze comes swinging sometimes. But the Institute helped develop the sniff drone. It's a drone with an electronic nose made up of 21 different chemical sensors to create odor concentration maps. So basically, it gives you this heat map, smelly map of your facility, so that way plant managers can take appropriate actions to improve odor management. And I think if companies were willing to invest in some of these new ideas, or maybe even just give them a try, that might help sell the town.
But if you're Pilgrim's Pride, do you feel like you have to sell the town? You're offering you're coming in saying, we want to be here. We want to open this plant, 100 jobs or whatever. There's probably other places they don't have to do that. So
I don't know. I feel like what community is not going to be like, you know what? Bring the smelly thing here. It's already pretty bad anyways.
Okay, but this is an issue because it's close to homes and schools.
True. I mean, yeah.
If this is 5 miles out of town, people probably don't care.
So just find people that care less instead of trying to find a modest solution.
I'm
just
like
looking at it from
picturing,
that perspective.
I'm just picturing Pilgrim's Pride with its like collar popped being like, you know who I am? I'm Pilgrim's Pride.
You don't tell Pilgrim's Pride what to do.
I make the rules.
We'll render anywhere. So both of you think the sniff drone's a loser.
Do you,
I think it's
if they said sniff drone to you and it was like right by your house, would you be like, well, okay, build it.
Well,
We'll see what happens.
We have a landfill near our house. And by near, I mean 5 to 10 miles down the road was never an issue. And then a couple of years, they started doing less burn-offs.
Mm-hmm.
And so the odor was coming into our neighborhood. And I tell you what, anytime they give me any sort of idea of like that remediation, what they're going to do to fix the problem, I'm in because it is atrocious.
But you're already there.
I'm already there. Yeah. But I mean, if it seemed like they acknowledged that might be a problem and they were going to take steps A and B to address it. And it's not, maybe it could be like a pilot plant or pilot program. And maybe if it works, it'll be something that goes to other communities or other plants could use. I mean, it would help sell me on it, especially if I'm in a small town without good job prospects. And this provides a good job with a potential solution to not make it intolerable for my kids in school. I don't know. It would be at least a
I think
good
if Pilgrim's Pride says we're going to do this, yes, great idea. I'm saying to say this is what Pilgrim's Pride should do and make that type of investment. I think that's the tougher sell. I think that's a tougher person to sell it on.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying you guys could figure it out.
David wants the chicken plant. Pilgrim's Pride.
Yeah.
I will give you his address.
Yeah, bring the plants and the sniff drone to the east side of Madison. We'll find you a spot. Real estate here is real cheap right now. The third most popular story on our site this week, why Walmart is giving 740,000 workers free smartphones. Walmart has announced plans to provide 740,000 workers with their own smartphones. The Samsung Galaxy X Cover Pro retails for about $500, and Walmart says workers can use them as their personal mobile device. There's a caveat, and it's a new app called Me at Walmart. They're not past the whole part where you put the really cool symbol in there and don't just stick to words or numbers. The app started as a way for employees to track scheduling, and it evolved into something Walmart says will simplify work tasks and help better serve customers. They say Me at Walmart is the first of its kind in the retail industry and will help workers save time and be more efficient. The average wage of a Walmart worker in 2020 was $14.76 per hour. Anna, is this going to be an invasion of privacy, or is this going to actually help workers be more efficient?
Maybe a little of both.
Yeah.
I like how the reader comments went straight to tracking device because, like, why wouldn't they?
Yeah. Big Brother surveillance state.
Yeah, except for that, like, Walmart kind of has like a published public history of like trying this stuff out. Like Bloomberg reported in 2019 that Walmart was testing a monitoring device made by a company called StrongArm, and it was described as a biometric harness that was ostensibly designed to track their movements with, I think, ergonomics in mind.
Whoa.
But Bloomberg said that some sites were actually using StrongArm to track productivity and improve efficiency. In 2018, Walmart was granted a patent that let them listen to in-store audio to ensure workers were properly greeting guests, I believe was what was said.
Right.
So I guess, like, of course, people's minds jump to the theory that Walmart is using these to keep tabs on their workers. On the other hand, there's probably a lot of business benefit to putting your employees on an app while they're at work and also removing any excuse for them to not use it. I mean, let's just hope that they're smart enough to take a lesson from their top competitor, Amazon, who was forced to backpedal on some of that driver monitoring tech that they had deployed recently because it was making people really angry and uncomfortable. So I don't know. Like, this might stay good PR if they use it responsibly and maybe are very straightforward with what's being like collected and utilized from a data standpoint. Or it could go the other way. I don't know. We'll see.
Which way's it going, Jeff?
I think it's a great idea. I think it's great. If for no other reason than they're getting a $500 phone, and these are, like you said, the average wage not super high.
Yeah.
So this is a nice item for them to have. I couldn't find anywhere if it specified if this was like U.S. workers or if this is globally that they're looking at 740,000 phones.
I don't know.
I couldn't
Yeah, I
see
don't know
anything. But just to offer perspective, I mean, Walmart employs like 2.5 million people around the world and about 1.6 million here in the U.S. So it's not like all of the workforce, and it is selective. You don't have to take the phone if you don't want to. One of the things that I thought was kind of cool is that in addition to like the scheduling and the worker benefits there, it also has a built-in capability for like a warehouse inventory tool. So like if they need to go and pick stuff from the store floor, go to the back room, bring it out. So I mean that just makes things easier too if that's on your personal device. I think there's also maybe some security issues that could potentially arise from this. We've seen that in the industrial sector where people are bringing in their own devices and downloading apps and using that at work. So you kind of would have that would be my bigger concerns more than the traceability or monitoring element of it.
Yeah.
But overall, I think it's a really cool idea. And I mean, Walmart's doing okay. They made like $15 billion in profit last year, so they can afford to do kind of
That's
nice
a good
things
year.
like
They
this.
can buy a
Few
million phones.
Yeah.
That's actually the warehouse inventory management thing is really interesting because I didn't think about that. The few times that I've been looking for something in Walmart and couldn't find it, when you ask an associate, what's the first thing they do? They get their phone out and they just search it on their app or on the Walmart website to find where it is. So
The other thing I
Be a
think
useful tool.
maybe would alleviate, I don't know, maybe some of the monitoring things is it is like, would Samsung want to be brought into that whole thing too?
That's a good point.
Hopefully they'll be doing a little bit of watchdogging on something like that, but it's not, they could
sure
say
they
it's
will.
not their responsibility too, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
When you hear something, my point was that when you hear something where they say improve worker productivity without collecting personal data, it's weird how whenever you hear we're not going to collect personal data, the first thing you think, we're trained to think, well, of course you are. It's like, why would you say that otherwise?
Yeah.
But as a former retail employee and a former Walmart employee, I have to say that anything that could make scheduling easier would be a benefit nearly worth the data mining that happened in the background, even if it wasn't.
If they tracked your audio, you would be fired day one.
That's not true because I was front end
disagree.
I was front end customer service. I had the
David,
maroon
we've
vest.
worked together for how long? Like,
Yeah.
come on.
But in a retail setting, I'm a kill 'em with kindness guy. It's just like, oh yeah, ma'am, you think the watermelon's a little squishy? Well, we'll put it back for you and get you another one.
See,
Why
that
don't
was
you-
really snarky right there.
Yeah. Why don't you kill us with kindness?
Yeah.
You've never once killed me
because
with kindness.
we're way too close. We're way too close. This is for strangers only. But
Strangers only.
think about any time that you've had those jobs where you need your Friday night shift covered or you need someone else to cover. Like, I think if you could do that in the app where it's like, hey, this person's going to cover for me and we're just going to make that scheduling switch right there. Also, if you've ever put together a schedule for a larger workforce, it is a burden.
Yeah.
Even with some of the automation software out there where you're trying to juggle people and their requests and their vacations. If this makes any of that at all easier, I think it is an incredible benefit. For the
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
that have
Fair
it.
point. I mean, if this is going to do that stuff, then great. Yeah.
And listen to their conversations. See, the listening software in the aisle, that's where you might catch me in a rough moment. You know?
Right. I know. That's what I'm saying.
No,
Yeah.
but see, when I'm checking people out, but my job at Walmart, I was just, customer service. So, I mean,
Do you think this would have helped avoid the birdseed incident that I experienced in college at Chopco where the pallet broke and we had like seriously 50 crates of birdseed just funneling through the warehouse?
Oh, it's so
I don't-
funny to picture that.
no, I don't know that I've ever heard that story. What happened?
Well, Shopco, kind of a regional retailer here, is where I worked in college, and we were always, the college kids would come in at night, and during the day, a lot of the workers there, they were just throwing stuff up in like the racks to get there because they knew we were the ones going to have to get it down. They didn't have to deal with it.
Okay.
So in this particular incident, we needed to get a bunch of birdseed down. So got the forklift out, which I was licensed to drive.
Yes.
Got it up there, but there was so many of these plastic cartons of birdseed just stacked on this old wooden pallet that as soon as we pulled it off the shelf, the pallet just shattered.
Oh.
Just shattered. And obviously the plastic containers of birdseed were not the highest quality. Shocking,
yeah.
right? And when they hit the floor from about 8-10 feet,
Oh my God.
just a flood of birdseed.
Like the worst possible thing that could
I
be
mean,
up there.
it was loud. I mean, they had to hear it out in the store. Like, it was extremely loud because all these plastic things, wood breaking. Yeah, it was just a flood of birdseed.
Hopefully he didn't have a rodent problem in the facility. And they just came
Probably
flying
did
out.
after that.
Yeah.
But no, that was a good time.
That's another
Yikes.
podcast. Our jobs before we got in publishing. Our second most popular story this week. Lordstown Motors warns that it might not stay in business. Lordstown Motors, the Apple of Lordstown, Ohio's eye, says it may not be in business in 2022. Lordstown says the $587 million that it had on hand as of March 31st isn't enough to start commercial production and begin selling the full-size pickup called the Endurance. In a filing with the SEC, the company said, quote, "These conditions raise substantial doubt regarding our ability to continue as a going concern for a period of at least 1 year." Now, going concern is a term companies use when noting that outside auditors are questioning their ability to remain in business. The news comes amid a host of other bad news, including the likelihood of cutting production by more than half to only 1,000 vehicles this year and losing up to $380 million in 2021. The company is now looking for new sources of capital, including issuing more equity or borrowing from partners, the government, or financial institutions. Anna, do you think they're going to find a dance partner?
I think we can file this under like the least surprising news ever. I know we talked last week about how startups were hit particularly hard during the pandemic when venture capital dried up for a time period, and everyone was kind of taking a tentative approach. Meanwhile, companies like Lordstown have no product and zero revenue to carry them through that time. And Lordstown has the unique distinction of trying desperately to find more investors while being sued for defrauding investors.
That's a tricky one.
So this is probably what we call in the business circling the drain. I think, I don't know. It's hard enough to get investors in a market where there's no supply for auto production. On top of that, Lordstown, as you said, is hemorrhaging money, and they're being sued also for accusations that they made misleading statements about their backlog of orders and their product design. They're also being accused of stealing trade secrets from another electric car company. So it's truly like a hornet's nest, and I will be surprised if Lordstown survives this.
Yeah, Jeff, sounds like you have the same sentiment.
Yeah, this was agreed, the least surprising story ever. Do you think Steve Burns is the president, CEO of Lordstown? Do you think he gets together with like Dyson and the guys at Faraday and the guys at Fisker, and they're like, hey, you know what? It's kind of hard to build a truck.
What do we do at this
Man.
point in
You
the
know when
journey?
everyone
It's
was
difficult.
You know when everyone was dumping on Musk because he's like, "Hey, I'm trying my best here."
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is actually pretty hard to
Yeah.
do. And I mean, you bring up Musk and Tesla, it took them 6 years to develop the Roadster. And they sold it for almost $100,000. And they were using the Lotus body. So they already had the body. It was everything else. They're starting from scratch here with Lordstown. They wanted to do it in 3 years, half the time, and sell it for half as much at about $50,000 for these trucks. So Elon Musk, one of the smartest entrepreneurs of our time, regardless of what you think about everything else, took him 6 years, cost him twice as much. They were going to do it in half the time and half the cost. There should have been some warning signs here. We wanted to drink this Kool-Aid because it was such a great story. Electric trucks, former GM facility, plant in Ohio, all this stuff. And as it turned out, it was just a lot harder and a lot more difficult and a lot more obstacles than everybody anticipated. And then when you had the Hindenburg report, the safety issues, the defrauding of investors, it's just too much. I agree with Anna. I just don't see these trucks really going anywhere.
Because GM, I believe, had a significant financial stake in the company, Is this something that you think GM comes and just brings back in? Or do you think it just dies?
I think the Lordstown motor goes away.
But
because
the endurance.
The endurance, I don't know. I don't know. It kind of depends. They said they're going to start making them this year. So if there's something already there and it turns out if it can actually function, it can, I mean, not without being rolled down a hill, it can actually drive.
Yeah.
You know, I think there is something there, especially with all of the publicity around the electric F-150 that's coming out. Tesla's coming out with an electric truck. So if there is engineering there that can be salvaged, yeah, GM would be foolish not to use it.
Yeah. I mean, Tesla's coming out with like a weird cube-shaped El Camino. But
how do you really feel about that one?
I'm going to get one. So the endurance, actually, you talk about, is it any good? They were going to sell it for $52,000, and it's already passed 2 of the U.S. government's toughest crash tests. And, you know, they said it was going to beat the electric 150 Lightning to market. And they already have purchase agreements for about 30,000 trucks.
We don't.
Yeah.
That's part of the issue is that their investors don't believe they have said purchase agreements.
But they said. Yeah, they said it's true.
Yeah, I mean, Steve Burns was quoting Taylor Swift songs about not being treated correctly. I mean, how could that not be accurate?
Is that a real thing?
Oh, yeah. He was just going to shake it off, all that publicity. Bad publicity. No, that is an actual.
That's a quote from him. Man.
Yeah.
So he's trying to appeal to the younger millennial buyer.
You are spinning. Tom Haverford over here. Good work.
Oh, man. Our most popular story this week. You're going to make it, Lordstown. Get that endurance out to market. Widow receives $222 million after her husband was killed in a plant accident. In June 2018, 45-year-old Jesse Henson was killed while working at the Westar Energy's Jeffrey Energy Center near St. Mary's, Kansas. Henson was on the 14th floor of the power plant investigating a loss of steam with another worker, Damian Burchett. When the elevator door opened on the floor, they were engulfed in superheated steam and sustained fatal burn injuries. The accident was caused by a faulty relief valve inspected and recently built by Team Industries, a Texas-based Westar subcontractor. Team not only identified the faulty release valve, but suspected that it would fail at the coal-fired plant. Still, the company never took the steps to prevent the catastrophe. The jury found Team 90% at fault for the incident, while Westar, now part of Evergy, was 10% responsible and awarded $222 million to Henson's widow. The relatives of Damian Burchett, the co-worker, have filed a separate lawsuit for his death. Anna, this is a very tough story to digest.
Yeah, it really was. And Team Industries, as you said, is a third-party maintenance services provider, and they contended while this trial was going on that Jesse Henson, the person who was tragically killed, was mostly responsible.
Yeah, they tried to blame him and Westar.
Yeah, and Westar.
Yeah.
So clearly a jury disagreed with that. I find it hard to believe a separate lawsuit filed by the family of the other deceased worker will go in a different direction because, the blame assigned to Team, I think specifically was like 90%.
Yeah.
And you assume that with this extremely high payout that they're factoring in maybe something that was egregious or negligent. And, obviously factoring in how horrific these deaths were and how these 2 men suffered. So I don't know. And these types of stories, I think, leave a bad taste in your mouth when you think about industrial jobs, and they sort of suggest that these kind of risks are more commonplace than they are, and they get really big headlines. And I think they also deter people from working industrial jobs. That's sort of just like outside of the very obvious horrible result of this. It's sort of like a side result, I think, that's a little bit more nebulous, and you see when these kind of stories get a lot of press,
Well, and we covered it a couple of weeks ago that it is still one of the more dangerous jobs out there. Jeff, do you see this contributing to the skills shortage?
Part of it, and it's also a communication issue. It blows me away that Team said, yeah, you should fix this, and then just leaves.
Yeah.
How do you have a clear conscience? I understand you're telling them what needs to be done, but how do you not follow? I don't know. That just kind of blows me away, how you can just walk away from
knowing the part's going to fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't a might. It wasn't a shouldn't. It will.
Yeah.
So that's the part that I don't get. We have all of these tools in place, all this software that's available to us in terms of visibility and documenting everything and all this historic information, preventative maintenance procedures, and something like this still tragically happens. The other thing that just comes to mind is we talk about this all the time, but these are dangerous jobs. That's the reality of it. And we probably undervalue that sometimes when we look at what these folks are doing every day. Other thing it made me think about is when we run content, we run a story like this where something horrible happened, gets a lot of attention, a lot of people look at it. If we ran an article talking about proper preventative maintenance procedures for valves, there would be 10 people clicking on that article. When we run that kind of stuff, it's white noise because that's what safety has become in a lot of cases. And it's not just our readers, it's everywhere. Okay. And that's part of the issue too. Need to pay attention to more of this stuff because, as I've said many times in our meetings internally, it's all the little stuff. It's the blocking and tackling that we have to do. Same thing here. You see something's broke, fix it. Okay. Or if you're in a maintenance procedure, don't just ignore all the safety information that's being put out, not just by us, but by all the organizations out there, all of the manufacturers, all the suppliers. Yeah, it's not the most exciting stuff to get through, but it's vitally important to pay attention to.
Yeah, it's got to be more than, well, that's not going to happen here.
Right.
The National Safety Council put out some estimates as to what the total economic costs of work-related deaths and injuries are. The total economic costs in 2019 were valued at $171 billion in the United States. That works out to about $1,100 per worker, more than $1.2 million per death in total economic costs, and $42,000 per medically consulted injury each year. I see this data and figure, again, like the previous, maybe we should be doing more from a safety perspective. I know that we talk about it all the time, but to your point, Jeff, we don't get, when we come out with new products, new safety products, best practices, case studies, they aren't always they're not the most popular.
Yeah.
Seldom are.
Yeah, I mean, so what do you do? Same thing when you're the management at these facilities too. We know from going and talking to these folks, there's safety teams, there's safety meetings, there's all this information posted all over the facility about safety. Well, if you've only got a lower percentage of individuals paying attention and taking that to heart, some of these things are more likely potentially to happen.
And it's, Anna, the one thing I noticed from this story is that it's not, a lot of these accidents are traditionally with lockout, tagout problems that we see. And this just seems like it was a part failure from a team that was extremely negligent.
Yeah. And these guys didn't have a chance. They just opened an elevator door. That was it.
Yeah.
Just awful.
Very awful. Let's move on to In Case You Missed It. Anna, what's your In Case You Missed It this week?
Okay, so GM has announced that it is expanding its OnStar service. Anyone remember OnStar?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was like one of the first digital roadside assistant tools that came out in the late 90s. And I think it kind of sort of faded into the background for all the other things GM is doing. It's just sort of like that button, right? But you can contact someone if you get into an accident or if you have a safety issue. So it's kind of digitized like AAA. So GM announced last week that they are now going to offer OnStar for any drivers, not just drivers of GM vehicles. And they made an app for it, and you can do a trial, and then after that it's $15 a month to have the app. And they acknowledged that they were looking for new revenue streams that were outside of just producing cars and trucks. And I think it's interesting because it points to some sort of, we talk about automotive innovation, and it's often around autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, all the new exciting electronics in there. But this is a completely different revenue stream for GM. And they're talking about how they have a lot of money invested in R&D and trying to develop new ideas for these sort of other customers that can create more recurring revenue for them. We saw this a little bit with VW a couple months back, and we talked about it on the podcast actually about how they were saying that maybe the future of automotive is on-demand features, right?
Yeah.
So everything is equipped in your vehicle, and then if you use your I don't know,
if you turn
ABS or something, then you get charged just as a one-off. And at the time, I really kind of knocked that idea. I think Jeff, you liked it.
I liked it.
I still don't like it, but it's an interesting idea that it sort of, they're always looking for more of that stuff, like with getting into finance and insurance and all that stuff, certified repair, just these options for adding new revenue streams that are more recurring. So you kind of wonder what took them so long with OnStar, because it's been around for so long. Maybe they thought it was more of a benefit to like buying a GM vehicle than it maybe actually is. Turned out to be. I don't know. So they got a lot of eggs in their basket right now. This is an interesting development, I think, because of some of the supply challenges that are happening right now with cars and trucks, and automakers saying like, look, we got to come up with other ways to make money.
Yeah, everyone wants wants subscription revenue now.
Exactly. Yeah.
And this I find interesting because while I thought the other was too much, because it was anything that you used in the car, you were kind of going to get nickeled and dimed for it. This is a simple app that you could purchase, and for using the service, it's $15 a month, and it's something that I always liked to have in the car. For roadside assistance or whatever you would use it. Or actually, I've seen it used the most to get people out because they've locked themselves in their car. What do you think, Jeff? Is this a good idea for GM?
I think it's cool. Yeah, I don't wonder. Are they still going to take it out of cars, like the button and stuff like that? Or are they still going to leave that in?
I think you still get it if you are a GM buyer. Okay. This is just opening it up to, if you're not, then you can get it on your phone.
Yeah, I think like 5 years ago I would have been like whatever. But having 3 teenage girls on the road. Yeah, this is definitely something I'd look at.
Good point.
Just for that added step of accountability, safety, all that kind of stuff, because they may not want to tell me or their mom about whatever's going on, but be able to reach out to somebody and make sure they're okay. Yeah. So I think it's a great idea by GM expanding that out. You've already got all the IT infrastructure in place. It becomes a mobile app. Makes a lot of sense to me.
Does this already exist with insurance companies? I don't know. Because I know that certain apps like Progressive have, roadside assistance, stuff like that you can get right through the app. Does this already exist out there? And they're late to market? I don't know.
Well, I know and I can't speak to all of them, but I know like my insurance company has an app, but it also taps into like what you're doing with your vehicle. So it's monitoring the performance of the vehicle, how safe you're driving,
so
and all that kind of stuff.
Hesitate. There are barriers to using that technology. Yeah. This is all carrot.
Okay. Jeff, what's your in case you missed it this week?
So we ran a blog that I thought was pretty cool, just because it talked about something we've discussed a lot over the last couple of issues, months, whatever like that. And it was looking at 10 of the worst cyber attacks that have occurred against manufacturers. Went back about 10 years or so. And it was submitted by, let me just pull up the author's name here real quick, make sure I say it correctly. David Lukic of idstrong.com. And it was basically a couple of just the short case studies, but it looked at like 10 different companies that we would know, like Foxconn, DuPont, Renault, Nissan, Apple, Royal Dutch Shell, Mondelez, all these folks who have had different types of cyber attacks within the last 5 to 10 years. Some of them went after data. Some of them were more ransomware schemes. But it really, what expressed to me is, yes, these big guys get hit. And when they get hit, they can deal with it. But the reality is a lot of small to mid-sized manufacturers have the same value within their IT infrastructure in terms of their intellectual property, their secret sauce, whatever they're doing. There's a lot of information that can be gathered there by bad actors. And what he went on to talk about is the fact that a lot of these improvements in cybersecurity, they're kind of basic, and it's more proactive and getting out there before something happens. All these companies had to react after the fact. And what we need to get the industrial sector, and we've talked about this with infrastructure as well, is to put things in place so they can't get there, or at least make it a lot harder. If we've learned anything from the Colonial Pipeline hit and some other things that have happened recently, the whole with the DOD getting hacked and stuff like that, it's getting out ahead of this. And I thought he had some really good ideas in terms of just having a response team ready, really training your people so they realize a lot of these cybersecurity things are not that complicated. We talked about the BYOD thing and bringing devices on site. So there's a lot of things that you don't have to invest a ton in terms of your enterprise infrastructure to guard against these attacks. A lot of it's simple. And if you don't, the implications can be enormous.
Yeah, well, and some of these are tens of millions. Some of them are hundreds of millions of dollars that it costs these companies.
And you didn't hear about them.
No,
lot.
No, you're right. Like I'm sure in the moment we did, but some of these kind of caught me off guard. I hadn't heard about them before. Anna, what was your thought on the piece?
Yeah, I mean, it made me think like what you really don't hear about is the ones that don't happen, the prevention. And I wondered if I would want to hear about all that, or if you don't want to know how much it's actually, how much people are trying to breach these systems, because some of these companies, I know this is like a wake up call for them, and then they make a lot of progress in terms of like, stealing off their business for future attacks. Some of them are pretty well equipped, but we know from data that most are not.
Yeah.
So it's scary.
Well, and manufacturing is the third most attacked industry out there. It's after financial institutions and insurance. Then comes the manufacturing industrial sector. So
is it because it's the most vulnerable?
I think it's vulnerable, and there's just so much data out there.
Yeah.
And there's the growing use of cloud computers and also or cloud networking, I should say, and also the fact that a lot of bring your own device, smaller, more connected information, and it's all centrally housed. So if you're looking to get personal information, proprietary data, it's all kind of in the same spot.
Mine, in case you missed it this week, was Amazon might be helping itself to your bandwidth. If you own an Amazon smart device, it might be sharing your internet connection with your neighbors unless you specifically tell it not to. On Tuesday, the company launched Amazon Sidewalk, a program that forces users of Echo smart devices and Ring security cameras to automatically share a small portion of your home wireless bandwidth with your neighbors. The idea is to create this mesh network that makes sure lights and smart locks and other gadgets that are outside your house and out of reach of Wi-Fi stay working. But it raises privacy and security concerns, and people are angry because Amazon just turned it on. It's pretty easy to opt out, and I encourage people to check out the article. But I have an Echo. I read the article last night, and I haven't turned it off yet. We're going to just say it's laziness. I plan on it. But I thought this was an incredible invasion of privacy, or just too many of our devices do this. We talk about it so many times about IoT and how I don't care if I have a smart refrigerator and what it knows about me. But some of these things are going to take our data, use them for their own benefit without ever asking us, and we don't really know what the security or privacy concerns are.
No, I agree. This is too far. I mean, this is intrusive to me, and the fact that it wasn't maybe publicized to greater extent is kind of head scratching. Like, you have to let people know this is going on, because when we first started talking about this, or I first saw the article, I was thinking, well, I've got 2 Fire devices. Do I have to worry about that? I mean, that's hooked into my Wi-Fi. Are they grabbing something there? I don't know. Or using that to funnel bandwidth or whatever. No, this seems very intrusive. I'd definitely be checking stuff out and making sure it's turned off or whatever you want to say.
It's just a couple of clicks on the app, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it last night. No, Anna, what do you think? I think part of this is also I'm at the moment where if I have smart devices outside of my personal Wi-Fi network, I don't necessarily need them to be connected.
Well, what they're doing to sell you on this is to say things like, what if your dog gets lost? And they've got like a tag. And they could connect to someone else's Wi-Fi that they're running past their house, and you can find your dog. Which, everyone wants to find the lost dog, man.
But you don't need Amazon to do that.
Yeah.
Well, it's just sort of, I feel like they're sort of trying to worm their way in with these anecdotal, trying to, like, I don't know, ease people's minds by like the benefits to it. And you can't cover up, like you said, some of the potential security concerns and just how off-putting it is, like you said, that they just turned it on. Like that's your Wi-Fi that you're paying for.
Yeah.
Get out of here. Like, what?
Well, and also, and it's probably making causing lag by taking, a certain percentage of your bandwidth. And also, they make the specific reference to if your pets get lost. But if they've created this nationwide global mesh network that can find anyone that's tagged at any time.
Find my dog, Amazon.
Yeah, we all have that tag because it's all downloaded on an app on our smartphone. And that's for a different story. Anyway, moving on to final thoughts this week. Jeff, any final thoughts for us?
Growing up, or maybe now, did you guys like Big League Chew?
Yes, I did.
It was amazing, right? Awesome.
Do they still sell that?
Well, that's where I'm going.
Okay.
Because my mom was out shopping or whatever, and she saw Big League Chew, and she's like, just as a kind of like a funny whatever, she bought it for me, and she brought it over, and she's like, here's a Big League Chew. So before both of our softball games this week, I chewed some Big League Chew.
Totally
Yeah.
noticed that you were chewing gum. I'm like, I don't know.
And I have not chewed bubble gum in I don't know how long. So putting it in first, it was so sweet. Like it just kind of blew me away. And just chewing on it was like, I'm not enjoying this.
Yeah. I think you're supposed to just tuck it into your cheek at like
I did the, like when you're a kid, I had the big chaw thing going
yeah.
here. And like I just kept breaking pieces off because it was too much.
Yeah.
That's what wound up on my shoe.
We won both games.
Oh?
So
The Big League Chew effect.
Yeah.
what do I do here?
You have to
Do I need to keep the Big League Chew going? The whole Bull Durham thing, you don't mess with a streak. You
Yeah.
respect the streak,
Well,
right?
and I mean, you won the game on Wednesday, so you're like
So I
game
got to
winning
keep going
double.
with it.
I mean, for that specific
Just for the
instance,
team.
Yeah.
I have to keep going with
You
the Big
have
League Chew.
You were gonna start chewing it at work.
Yeah.
I can already see this
I'll be
coming.
addicted.
Yeah.
I totally noticed that because you were playing left, I was in left center, and I looked over and I'm like, is he chewing? Like, and you're not like a seeds guy, And I'm just like, I don't know that I've ever seen Jeff with gum before, but
Yeah.
I noticed it.
So that was sorry, I'll keep it going.
Yeah, you
Gotta
have
keep
to
it going.
You have to. Also, Big League Chew was like created to be like the gateway drug to like dipping, right?
I don't know if it was, I don't know. That was just, as a
it
kid, I
was in
didn't
the
think
same-
about it that
Baseball,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Remember
in the
how
same
big
pack.
baseball was in the 80s? Like, it just was like for kids to, I don't think. I
It
mean, you
had-
think like Skull was like,
No, not Skull. There was
Red
another
Man?
Red Man. Yeah. It was the exact same size packaging, and it like even was shredded like it. And because Sandlot, like that was the exact same pack. Threw a dip in, hit a roller coaster, big mess. Although I never made the transition. Like,
Yeah, I never got into tobacco, but
no, I like the whole idea of it was so disgusting that I'm like, no, I really don't get that one. But it's the buzz. That's a pass. Apparently, it's the sensation of how sweet it is now. That's how we know we're getting older. Like, it's not the
Yeah.
nicotine buzz we want. It's just, ooh, got my sweet tooth. Anna, what's your final thought this week?
oh, well, I got to scrap my final thought and piggyback off that. So when I played Little League poorly, I liked the lick-a-stick. Remember that thing that was
Oh,
like the
yeah.
powder and then you would lick
absolutely.
Fun dip.
the fun dip.
Yeah,
That's so gross. Do they still make that?
probably.
I'm not in the age of the coronavirus. I'll
Yeah.
tell you what. They don't want
See,
you licking something, sticking it back in there,
I like
sharing
the
that.
stick. That was like the best part because like the powder was kind of sour, but like the stick was sweet. That's what I actually like better.
All right. Well, that's what you can have at work then.
No, between that and the pixie stick is the reason I have such an investment in my mouth right now. Because it's like, wait a second. I mean, it's like the next step to mainlining it, right? No, we'll just give them a big pouch of it to dip, or like a giant stick that they can just.
The giant stick.
The
Remember
giant
that?
pixie stick.
And
Oh, yeah.
people would give that to me when I was like 5.
Oh yeah, that was my regular going to a movie. It was popcorn and a giant pixie stick, and then I had such an attitude problem afterwards. All right, my final thought this week is I just wanted to say hello and welcome to new subscribers, Travis and Pete. Thanks for reaching out. I really appreciate that. Also, I'm out next week, so Andy Zell is going to be back. You guys are in for another treat, but I'll be back the following week.
Andy Week. It's going to be fun.
That's right. Zal's incredible insight and snarkiness will bring joy to many.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share the podcast, and to email the podcast. You can reach any of us at Jeff, Anna, or David at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You could also do us a favor by subscribing to our newsletters. Make sure you get it in your inbox first. All right. For Jeff and Anna, I'm David Manti, and this has been the Today in Manufacturing podcast. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.